Captain Jake Morrison was drinking his morning coffee when the alarm started screaming across the bridge of the UES Defiance. The hot liquid splashed across his uniform as he jumped from his chair, but he barely noticed. Every screen on the bridge was flashing red warnings that made his blood run cold. "Report!" Jake shouted over the noise. Lieutenant Ben Hayes looked up from his station, his face pale. "Sir, we have massive objects appearing in Earth orbit. They just showed up out of nowhere." Jake rushed to the main viewing screen. What he saw made him forget about the coffee stain on his shirt. Enormous ships hung in space around Earth like silver jewels. They were beautiful in a way that hurt to look at, all smooth curves and crystal surfaces that seemed to bend light around them. Each ship was easily 3 times the size of anything humans had ever built. "How many?" Jake asked. 12 large vessels, sir. They're positioning themselves over major cities. New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow." Ben's voice shook slightly. "Sir, they're not responding to any of our communications." Down on Earth, Admiral Lisa Parks stood in the command center in Houston, watching the same impossible sight on her screens. She had been in the military for 20 years, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. Phone calls were flooding in from every world leader, all asking the same question she could not answer. "Ma'am," Major Kate Sullivan said, walking up with a tablet in her hands, "we're getting reports from all over the world. The ships appeared at exactly the same time everywhere. No warning, no energy signatures, nothing on our deep space sensors." Lisa nodded grimly. "Any hostile actions?" "None so far." "They're just sitting there." Dr. Alex Chun burst into the command center, still wearing his lab coat from the observatory. His gray hair was messy and his glasses were crooked. "Admiral, you need to see this. The energy readings from those ships are off the charts." "Whatever technology they're using, it's centuries ahead of anything we have." Before Lisa could respond, every screen in the room changed. A face appeared, unlike anything any human had ever seen. The being had pale, almost translucent skin that seemed to shimmer with its own light. It had 4 arms, each ending in delicate fingers, and large eyes that held an ancient sadness. "People of Earth," the being spoke, and somehow everyone could understand the words perfectly. "I am Harmonykeeper Veltar of the Zephrian Collective. We come in peace, but with urgent purpose." Lisa stepped forward, even though she knew the alien could not see her. Around the world, millions of people stopped what they were doing to listen. "Your world is in great danger," Veltar continued. "A threat approaches that your people cannot comprehend or defend against. We have come to protect you, to shield your planet from the great devouring that has consumed countless worlds before yours." In New York, Maria Santos was walking to work when every screen in Times Square showed the alien's face. People stopped in the street, some screaming, others just staring in shock. Maria pulled out her phone to call her sister, but all the networks were jammed. "We understand this is frightening," Veltar said, his voice somehow sounding both alien and kind, "but you must trust us. We will establish protective barriers around your world. These barriers will keep the danger away, but they will also prevent your spacecraft from leaving your atmosphere. This is necessary for your survival." President William Foster sat in the Oval Office, surrounded by his advisors. None of them knew what to say. The most powerful man on Earth felt completely helpless as he watched the alien explain humanity's new reality. "The barriers will be activated within 1 planetary rotation," Veltar announced. "Do not attempt to interfere with our ships or our work. We mean you no harm, but we cannot allow anything to compromise your protection. We will establish communication channels for your leaders. Until then, remain calm and trust that we act only for your preservation." The transmission ended, leaving Earth in stunned silence. Back on the Defiance, Jake stared at the dark screen. "Ben, get me a connection to Houston Command." "Yes, sir." "Admiral Park is standing by?" Lisa's face appeared on the screen, looking as shaken as Jake felt. "Captain Morrison, what's your status?" "All systems normal, Admiral, but those ships are like nothing in our databases. My tactical officer says their hulls are made of some kind of living crystal." "Living crystal?" Lisa frowned. Kate Sullivan stepped into view of the camera. Ma'am, the ship seemed to be growing, not bigger, but more complex. New structures are appearing on their surfaces every few minutes. Dr. Chun appeared beside Lisa. Captain, this is Dr. Chun. Can you get any energy readings from the ships? We're trying. Doctor, but our sensors can barely detect them. It's like they're not completely in our dimension. As they spoke, the Zephrian ships began to change. Streams of light flowed from each vessel, creating a web of energy that surrounded the entire planet. The light was beautiful, like aurora borealis, but it made every human who saw it feel small and trapped. Lieutenant Commander Ben Hayes, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. Admiral, I've been studying the transmission. The alien Veltar mentioned something called the Great Devouring. I've been searching our databases for anything similar. Find anything? Lisa asked. Nothing specific, but there are some old radio signals we picked up from deep space years ago. Distress calls from civilizations we never identified. They all mentioned something consuming their worlds, but we never understood what they meant. In the streets of London, Dr. Rachel Miller stood with thousands of other people, all looking up at the massive ship hanging over their city as Earth's chief diplomat. She should be in meetings, making plans, but what could anyone plan for this? The Zephrian ship above London was starting to pulse with gentle light. Similar pulses came from the ships over other cities. The light formed patterns. That seemed almost like music made visible. They're communicating with each other, Rachel whispered to herself, back in Houston. Lisa was coordinating with world leaders when her communications officer ran up to her. Admiral, we're receiving a direct transmission from the ship over our city. Put it through. Veltar's face appeared again, but this time he seemed to be speaking directly to them. Admiral Park, we know you are the leader of your military forces. We request a meeting. One of your representatives may come aboard our vessel. Lisa felt her heart racing. How do you know my name? We have been observing your world for some time, preparing for our arrival. We know your languages, your leaders, your customs. This knowledge is necessary for your protection. How long have you been watching us? Lisa demanded. Long enough to know that your people will ask many questions. We will answer what we can, but understand that some knowledge is too dangerous for minds that have not been prepared. Major Kate Sullivan stepped forward. And who decides what we can handle? Veltar's large eyes focused on her through the screen. Those who have seen civilizations die from knowledge they were not ready to receive. Major Sullivan, your courage is noted, but wisdom sometimes requires accepting limits. Kate's face flushed with anger, but Lisa held up a hand to stop her from responding. We'll send a representative, Lisa said carefully. But we want answers, real answers about this threat you claim is coming. You will have what answers we can safely provide, Veltar replied. Prepare your representative. They will be transported to our vessel within the hour. The transmission ended, leaving the humans to face an impossible choice. Trust aliens who claim to be protectors or resist beings who could clearly destroy them if they chose to. Lisa looked around at her team. Well, people, it looks like everything just changed. The question is, do we believe them or do we start figuring out how to fight gods? 3 months had passed since the Zephrians arrived, and Earth felt like a different world. The shimmering barriers that surrounded the planet cast strange colors across the sky, making every sunset look like something from a dream, but for Pilot Officer Maria Santos. Those beautiful barriers were a prison. Maria stood in the briefing room at Edwards Air Force Base, looking at the mission board that had not changed in weeks. Every flight path ended at the same point, 40 miles above Earth's surface, where the alien barrier stopped all human aircraft from going higher. Same patrol route today, Santos, said Colonel Don Parker, walking into the room with a cup of coffee that had gone cold hours ago. Check the eastern sector, make sure no unauthorized aircraft are trying to breach the barrier. Maria nodded, but her heart was not in it. Before the aliens came, she had been training for a mission to Mars. Now she could not even leave Earth's atmosphere. Yes, sir. Any word from the negotiations? Don shook his head. Dr. Miller is still trying to get straight answers from them. 3 months of meetings, and we still don't know what this great devouring thing actually is. Across the country in Washington, Dr. Rachel Miller sat across from Veltar in a room that had been specially built for their meetings. The Zephrians' 4 arms moved gracefully as he arranged small crystal devices on the table between them. The crystals hummed softly and created perfect translations of their words. "Harmonykeeper Veltar," Rachel said, trying to keep her voice calm. "My people need more information. You've been here for 3 months, and you still speak only in riddles about this threat." Veltar's large eyes reflected sadness that seemed older than humanity itself. "Dr. Miller, your people have a saying about curiosity and cats. Some knowledge kills those who possess it. The entities that make up the great devouring feed on understanding. The more a species knows about them, the easier it becomes for them to find and consume that species." Rachel leaned forward. "But how can we prepare if we don't know what we're preparing for?" "You cannot prepare," Veltar said simply. "That is why we are here. Your role is to live and create and grow as a species. Our role is to shield you from threats your minds cannot safely comprehend." Rachel felt frustration building in her chest. "And what about our freedom? What about our right to choose our own path?" "Freedom is meaningless if you are dead," Veltar replied. "We have seen 47 worlds consumed by the great devouring. In every case, the species discovered the truth too late to save themselves." Meanwhile, in a secret laboratory beneath the Nevada desert, Captain Sophie Turner worked with a team of scientists who were trying to understand Zephrian technology. The room was filled with alien artifacts that the Zephrians had allowed them to study, though nothing important enough to reveal their secrets. Dr. Tony Garcia held up a small piece of the crystal material that formed the alien ships. "It's incredible. Sophie, this crystal appears to exist in multiple dimensions at once. When I scan it with X-rays, I get different results every time." Sophie examined the readings on her computer screen. "It's like it's changing what it is based on how we look at it." "Exactly. And look at this." Tony pulled up another screen. "Remember those energy readings we took when they first arrived? I've been comparing them to readings from our own quantum research lab. There are similarities that don't make sense." Sophie frowned. "What kind of similarities?" "The dimensional signatures are almost identical to what we were producing in our quantum fold experiments. The ones we were running right before the aliens arrived." Before Sophie could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. "Emergency!" Lights flashed red as a computerized voice announced, "An authorized energy signature detected. All personnel report to stations." In the main command center, Admiral Lisa Parks stared at her screens in confusion. "What am I looking at, Major Sullivan?" Kate Sullivan pointed to a display showing energy readings from around the globe. "Ma'am, we're detecting massive power fluctuations from all the Zephrian ships. They started about 5 minutes ago." "Are they preparing to attack?" "I don't think so. The readings suggest they're worried about something." Dr. Alex Chun ran into the command center, his lab coat flying behind him. "Admiral, you need to see this. We just detected something in deep space." "What kind of something?" Alex pulled up a star chart on the main screen. 3 days ago, our deep space sensors picked up an energy signature moving toward our solar system. It's not a ship or an asteroid. It's something else entirely." Lisa studied the readings. "How long until it gets here?" "At its current speed, about 6 months. But Admiral, that's not the strange part. The energy signature matches readings we took from Earth 3 months ago." "What readings?" "From the Quantum Research Lab in Nevada. The one that was working on dimensional fold technology right before the aliens arrived." In the city above, young hacker Sam Rodriguez sat in his apartment, surrounded by computer screens showing intercepted Zephrian communications. Sam had been working for months to break their encryption, and finally, pieces were starting to make sense. The aliens were definitely talking to each other, but not about humans. They were arguing about something they called the timeline. Sam had managed to translate enough to understand that some Zephrians thought they had arrived too early, while others believed they were already too late. Sam picked up his phone and called his contact at the Pentagon. Major Sullivan. It's Sam. I've got something you need to hear. Kate's voice came through the phone clearly. What is it, Sam? The aliens are scared. Really scared. They keep talking about temporal adjustments and probability cascades. I think they're not just here to protect us from something. I think they're here to prevent something from happening. Prevent what? I'm not sure, but they keep mentioning Earth's quantum experiments. They seem to think humans were on the verge of discovering something dangerous. Kate was quiet for a moment. Sam, can you send me those translations? Already on the way. Back at the Nevada laboratory, Dr. Alan Foster was working late when he made a discovery that changed everything. Alan was a quantum physicist who had been studying the dimensional readings from both the aliens and Earth's own research. As he compared the data sets, a terrifying possibility began to form in his mind. Alan called his colleague Dr. Tony Garcia. Tony, you need to get down here right now. Alan, it's midnight. Can't this wait? No, it can't. I think I know why the aliens are really here. 20 minutes later, Tony stood in Alan's lab, looking at screens full of quantum equations and dimensional calculations. Walk me through it. Alan pointed to a complex diagram on his whiteboard. Look at these readings from our quantum fold. Experiments. Now look at the readings from the alien ships. They're not just similar, Tony. They're inversely related. Meaning what? Meaning our experiments were creating the exact kind of dimensional instability that the aliens are trying to prevent. Tony, what if the Great Devouring isn't something coming from outside our dimension? What if it's something that gets created when species like us advance too quickly in quantum research? Tony felt his blood run cold. You're saying we're the threat? I'm saying we might be. Think about it. The aliens arrived right after our quantum experiments reached a critical phase. They immediately shut down our space program and established barriers that prevent us from leaving Earth. They're not here to protect us from something else. Tony, they're here to protect the universe from us. Alan turned to another screen showing the energy signature approaching Earth. And this thing that's coming toward us? I think it's attracted to our quantum experiments. We might have already sent out a signal that called it here. Tony sank into a chair, overwhelmed by the implications. So the aliens are trying to clean up a mess we started without even knowing it? That's exactly what I think. And if I'm right, then every question we've been asking has been wrong. The question isn't what are they protecting us from? The question is, what are they protecting everyone else from us? As Alan and Tony stared at their data, similar realizations were beginning to dawn on scientists and officials around the world. The beautiful, mysterious aliens who had come to save humanity might actually be jailers, keeping Earth's dangerous children from accidentally destroying themselves and everyone else. But if that was true, then humanity faced a choice that no species had ever been given: accept their cage and live safely, or fight for their freedom and risk destroying everything they had ever known. 6 months under Zephrian protection had changed everything about how humans lived. General Chris Adams walked through the underground bunkers that had become humanity's last free spaces, watching engineers work by candlelight because the alien barriers interfered with their power systems. Maya, how are we doing on the independent power grid? Chris asked engineer Maya Johnson, who was bent over a complicated device that looked like it had been built from spare parts. Maya wiped sweat from her forehead and looked up. Getting there, General. Dr. Garcia and I figured out how to shield our equipment from the alien interference. The bad news is it only works underground or underwater. And the good news? The good news is we're not completely helpless. We can still do science down here, even if the aliens don't want us to. Chris nodded grimly. The Human Resistance Council wasn't trying to fight the Zephrians directly. That would be suicide. Instead, they were working to preserve human independence and keep developing technology that didn't depend on alien permission. Dr. Tony Garcia emerged from a side tunnel, carrying a tablet that showed readings from their hidden laboratory. Chris, you need to see this. We've been monitoring the quantum signatures from the surface, and something big is happening. What kind of something? The Zephrians are getting desperate. Their ships are producing more energy than ever before, and their barrier systems are fluctuating. Whatever they're trying to keep out, it's getting closer. Miles away, Captain Lucy Barnes stood on the bridge of the submarine Endeavour, one of the few vessels that could still operate freely. The deep ocean was the only place on Earth where humans could move without alien oversight, and Lucy had used that freedom to establish a network of underwater research stations. "Sonar contact, Captain," reported her navigator petty officer. "Rick Chun, it's the research station Atlantis. Dr. Morgan is requesting immediate pickup. What's his status?" "Emergency evacuation, ma'am. He says he's made a discovery that changes everything." Lucy frowned. Dr. Steve Morgan was one of their best scientists, and he wasn't the type to panic easily. "Take us down to the station." "Maximum speed." 2 hours later, Dr. Morgan sat in the Endeavour's briefing room, his hands shaking as he tried to explain what he had found. The older scientist looked like he hadn't slept in days, and his usually calm demeanor was completely gone. "The quantum signatures aren't random," Steve said, pulling up data on his waterproof tablet. "I've been studying them for months, and I finally found the pattern. The readings spike whenever humans are being creative or making breakthroughs." Lucy leaned forward. "What do you mean?" "I mean every time a human has a moment of inspiration. Every time we solve a problem or create something new, we produce quantum fluctuations. Most of the time, they're tiny, and they fade away harmlessly. But when we work together, when we really push the boundaries of what we know, those fluctuations build up." Captain Barnes studied the data on Steve's screen. "And the aliens can detect this? Not just detect it. They're terrified of it." "Lucy, I think human consciousness itself is the threat they came to contain." Meanwhile, on the surface, Dr. Lisa Wong was conducting her own research in a hidden laboratory beneath the ruins of the old quantum research facility. As Earth's leading expert on consciousness studies, she had been investigating the connection between human thinking and the quantum effects that seemed to worry the aliens so much. Lisa's research had led her to an incredible discovery. Human brains, especially when working on complex problems, created tiny tears in the fabric of space-time. These tears were usually so small they healed instantly, but under certain conditions they could grow larger. "The aliens aren't lying about the threat," Lisa said to her assistant, Dr. Paul Martinez, as they reviewed brain scans from creative individuals. "But they're not telling us the whole truth either." Paul looked at the scans showing unusual quantum activity in the brains of artists, scientists, and inventors. "What do you think they're hiding?" "I think they're hiding the fact that this effect isn't necessarily dangerous. Look at these patterns. The quantum fluctuations don't just tear spacetime, they also repair it. Human consciousness might be the first natural mechanism for safely opening and closing dimensional barriers." Back in the underground bunkers, General Adams received a message that made his blood run cold. Commander Jack Phillips, who had been leading diplomatic efforts with the Zephrians, was requesting an emergency meeting. Jack arrived at the bunker looking exhausted and frightened. "Chris, I confronted Veltar with our theories about human consciousness. He didn't deny them." "What did he say?" "He told me the truth, the real truth." Jack sat down heavily in a metal chair. "The Zephrians aren't just refugees from the Great Devouring. They're the survivors of their own creative breakthrough." Chris felt his stomach drop. "Meaning what?" "Meaning they did exactly what we're doing now. They developed quantum consciousness technology, they opened dimensional barriers, and something came through that consumed most of their civilization. And now they think we're going to do the same thing? Not exactly. They think we already have done it." "Chris, that energy signature approaching Earth? It's not coming from space. It's coming from the dimensional tiers that human consciousness has been creating for the past 50 years. The implications hit Chris like a physical blow. "So we've already called this thing to Earth?" "According to Veltar, yes. Every human breakthrough, every moment of creativity, every scientific discovery has been sending out signals across dimensions. And something that feeds on consciousness has been following those signals here." Dr. Amy Clark, who had been working on consciousness. Research in another part of the bunker suddenly appeared in the doorway. General Adams, you need to hear this. I've been monitoring quantum activity across the planet, and I think I know what's really happening. Amy rushed to a computer terminal and pulled up a global map showing quantum fluctuations. Look at this pattern. The strongest quantum signatures aren't coming from our research facilities. They're coming from schools, hospitals, art studios, and places where people are working together to solve problems. So what are you saying? I'm saying the threat isn't human technology. It's human nature itself. We create these quantum effects naturally just by being human. The Zephrians aren't here to stop us from developing dangerous technology. They're here to stop us from being ourselves. Jack nodded grimly. That's exactly what Veltar told me. He said no other species they've encountered has consciousness that naturally interacts with quantum fields. Most species have to develop advanced technology to affect space-time. Humans do it just by thinking creatively. Dr. Karen Lee, who had been listening from another terminal, looked up with a strange expression on her face. But what if that's not a bug? What if it's a feature? Everyone turned to look at her. Karen was known for her unconventional thinking, but this seemed like an odd time for optimism. Think about it, Karen continued. The Zephrians developed technology to do what we do naturally. They had to build machines to create quantum effects. But they made a mistake, and something dangerous came through their artificial barriers. And, your point is? My point is that maybe natural quantum consciousness is safer than artificial quantum technology. Maybe the reason we can create these effects naturally is because we're also naturally equipped to control them. Chris felt a spark of hope for the first time in months. You're suggesting we might be able to handle this threat better than the Zephrians could? I'm suggesting we might be able to handle it in a way they never imagined. They're trying to protect us by suppressing our natural abilities. But what if our natural abilities are actually the solution? The room fell silent as everyone considered this possibility. For 6 months, they had been thinking of themselves as the problem that needed to be contained. But what if they were actually the solution that had never been tried? Captain Barnes' voice came through the communication system from the Endeavour. General Adams, we're receiving a transmission from Dr. Morgan. He says the quantum signatures are building towards some kind of cascade event. Whatever's coming, it's going to be here soon. Chris looked around the room at the faces of humanity's hidden scientists and leaders. Then we need to make a choice. Do we trust the Zephrians to protect us, or do we trust ourselves to face whatever's coming? The answer would determine not just the fate of Earth, but the future of human consciousness itself. The confrontation came sooner than anyone expected. Commander Jack Phillips stood in the diplomatic chamber facing Veltar. But this time he was not alone. Dr. Lisa Wong, General Chris Adams, and Captain Lucy Barnes had come with him, representing humanity's hidden research efforts. Veltar's forearms moved nervously as he sensed the change in the humans before him. His large eyes reflected what looked like fear, though Jack was not sure if the alien was afraid of them or for them. You have discovered more than we intended, Veltar said, his musical voice carrying a sadness that seemed to echo through the crystal chamber. We had hoped to protect you from this knowledge. Jack stepped forward. The knowledge that we're the threat you came to stop? Or the knowledge that you've been lying to us for 6 months? We have not lied. We have simply shared only the truths you could safely handle. Dr. Wong spoke up, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were discussing. Harmonykeeper Veltar, our research shows that human consciousness naturally creates quantum fluctuations. You've been trying to suppress this ability because you believe it's dangerous. Veltar's skin seemed to shimmer with distress. Because it is dangerous, Dr. Wong. My people learned this truth too late. Tell us what really happened to your civilization, General Adams demanded. No more riddles, no more half-truths. We need to know exactly what we're facing. Veltar was quiet for a long moment, his eyes distant as if he was looking back through centuries of memory. Finally, he began to speak. The Zephrian collective was once a single world, much like yours. We were curious, creative, always pushing the boundaries of what was possible. We developed technology that could manipulate quantum fields, allowing us to peer into other dimensions. Captain Barnes leaned forward. What did you find? We found that consciousness exists across multiple dimensions. In some dimensions, consciousness takes physical form. In others, it exists as pure energy. And in the spaces between dimensions, there are entities that feed on conscious thought itself. Jack felt a chill run down his spine, the great devouring. Yes, these entities cannot enter a dimension naturally. They must be invited through tiers in space-time. Our quantum experiments created such tiers, and the entities followed the trail of consciousness back to our world. Dr. Wong asked the question they all dreaded. What happened when they arrived? They did not destroy our bodies or our cities. They consumed our minds. One by one, my people became empty shells, their consciousness drained away to feed beings from between the worlds. Only those of us who were off-world when it happened survived. The humans exchanged glances, understanding now why the Zephrians were so desperate to prevent the same fate from befalling Earth. But here is what you must understand, Veltar continued. We created artificial quantum tiers using technology. You create them naturally with your minds alone. This has never happened before in all the civilizations we have encountered. General Adams frowned. You're saying we're unique? Completely unique. Every other species must build machines to affect quantum fields. Your brains do it simply by thinking creatively. When your people work together on complex problems, when you create art, when you make scientific breakthroughs, you naturally open tiny doorways between dimensions. Captain Barnes connected the dots. And these doorways are what attracted the consciousness-eating entities to Earth. Yes, but there is something else, something we did not understand until we began studying your species closely. Veltar's voice carried a note of something that might have been hope. Your natural quantum consciousness also naturally heals. The tears it creates, Dr. Wong felt her heart racing. What do you mean? When my people opened quantum tears with machines, the tears remained open until we deliberately closed them. But when humans create quantum effects through consciousness, the effects usually fade and heal on their own. Your mind seemed to have a built-in safety mechanism. Jack stared at the alien in disbelief. So you're saying we might actually be safer than your people were? Possibly. But the entities that consumed my world are already on their way to yours. They have been following the quantum signatures your species has been producing for decades. They will arrive soon, and we do not know if your natural defenses will be strong enough to stop them. Back on Earth, Dr. Amy Clark was making discoveries that would change everything. In her hidden laboratory, she had been studying brain scans from humans who had experienced creative breakthroughs. What she found challenged everything the Zephrians had told them. Dr. Martinez, look at this, Amy said, showing her colleague. Brain scans from a group of musicians who had been composing together. See these quantum fluctuations in their neural activity? Paul studied the scans carefully. They're creating micro-tears in space-time, just like Veltar described. But watch what happens next. Amy showed him the next series of scans. The tears don't just heal naturally. The healing process actually strengthens the barriers between dimensions. Paul's eyes widened. You're saying human creativity doesn't just avoid damage, it actually makes reality more stable? Exactly, and there's more. Look at these scans from children learning to read, from doctors saving lives, from engineers solving problems. Every time humans work together to overcome challenges, we're not just creating quantum effects. We're strengthening the fabric of space-time itself. Meanwhile, in the underwater research station Atlantis, Dr. Steve Morgan was monitoring the approaching entities that the Zephrians feared so much. His instruments detected them as they moved through the spaces between dimensions, following the trail of consciousness that Earth had been unconsciously broadcasting. Steve called Captain Barnes on the Endeavor. Lucy, they're almost here. The entities will reach Earth's dimensional boundaries within days. What can you tell us about them? They're not what I expected. Zephrians described them as pure predators, but my readings suggest they're more complex than that. They seem to be drawn to consciousness, yes, but not necessarily to destroy it. What do you mean? I mean they might be trying to communicate. The quantum patterns they're producing look almost like language. This information reached the diplomatic chamber just as Veltar was explaining his people's greatest fear. The entities will sense the consciousness on your world and attempt to feed, the alien was saying. Once they begin, they cannot be stopped. Your only hope is to suppress all quantum activity until they pass by your world, Dr. Wong interrupted. What if we don't hide from them? What if we try to communicate instead? Veltar's skin turned a pale, frightened color. Impossible. No species has ever successfully communicated with the entities. No species has ever had natural quantum consciousness before, General Adams pointed out. Maybe that makes a difference. You would risk your entire civilization on a possibility? Jack looked at his fellow humans, seeing the same determination in their eyes that had driven humanity to explore every frontier they had ever encountered. Veltar, with all respect to your people, suffering, hiding, and suppressing ourselves isn't living. It's just existing. If these entities are coming whether we hide or not, then maybe it's time to try something your people never could. Captain Barnes' voice came through the communication system. Commander Phillips, Dr. Morgan reports the entities have reached Earth's dimensional boundary. They're beginning to probe our reality. Veltar stood quickly, his forearms moving in what the humans had learned was a gesture of extreme distress. It has begun? You must allow us to strengthen the barriers immediately. No, Dr. Wong said firmly. We're going to try something different. You will doom your species. General Adams stepped forward. Maybe, but we're going to face this threat as humans, not as prisoners. If we fail, at least we'll fail on our own terms. The moment of truth had arrived. Humanity would either prove that their unique gifts could handle a threat that had destroyed the Zephrians, or they would become another cautionary tale about species that reached too far too fast. But as Jack looked at his companions, he felt something the Zephrians had never experienced in their encounter with the entities, hope based not on hiding, but on the uniquely human belief that any problem could be solved if you were brave enough to face it directly. The entities arrived like whispers in the night, pressing against the barriers between dimensions with a hunger that made every sensitive person on Earth feel suddenly cold and alone. In the diplomatic chamber, Veltar's crystalline skin had turned almost white with terror as he felt the familiar presence that had destroyed his world. They are here, he said, his musical voice barely above a whisper. Just as they came to us, drawn by the quantum signatures of conscious thought. Dr. Lisa Wong stood at the quantum monitoring station that had been hastily set up in the chamber. The readings showed massive disturbances in space-time around Earth as the consciousness entities probed for entry points. Veltar, when your people encountered these entities, did anyone try to understand what they actually wanted? The Zephrians. Large eyes fixed on her with something close to horror. Dr. Wong, they want to consume consciousness itself. What more is there to understand? Maybe everything, Lisa replied, studying the patterns on her screen. These quantum fluctuations aren't random. There's structure here, almost like language. General Adams activated his communication link to the global network. All stations, this is General Adams. Report your status, Captain Barnes responded from the Endeavour. Sir, Dr. Morgan's readings show the entities are trying to communicate. The quantum patterns are repeating in mathematical sequences. From the underground bunkers, Engineer Maya Johnson's voice crackled through. General, our shielded equipment is picking up something incredible. The entities aren't trying to break through randomly. They're responding to our quantum signatures. Commander Jack Phillips looked at Veltar. What if your people never gave them a chance to communicate? What if the feeding only happened because they were starving and desperate? Impossible, Veltar sighed, but his voice carried less certainty than before. Dr. Amy Clark's voice came through from her hidden laboratory. General Adams, I'm reading massive quantum activity from population centers worldwide, but it's not chaotic. People are naturally synchronizing their consciousness patterns. In cities around the world, something extraordinary was happening. Without any coordination or instruction, humans were unconsciously working together. In hospitals, medical teams found themselves thinking in perfect harmony as they saved lives. In schools, children naturally formed groups to solve problems they had never encountered before. Artists in different countries began creating works that perfectly complemented each other despite never having met. Dr. Carl Johnson, monitoring these events from a research station in Antarctica, made a discovery that changed everything. The consciousness entities aren't trying to consume human thought, he reported. They're trying to feed it. What do you mean? General Adams asked. I mean they're sending energy toward Earth, not trying to drain it away. They're offering to share consciousness, not steal it. Veltar's skin began to shimmer with confusion and something that might have been hope. That cannot be correct. Your people used artificial quantum technology, Dr. Wong interrupted. The entities couldn't communicate properly with machines, but human consciousness speaks their language naturally, as if responding to this revelation. The quantum disturbances around Earth suddenly shifted. Instead of pressing against the barriers, the entities began to harmonize with the natural fluctuations created by human consciousness. In the command center beneath Nevada, Dr. Steve Morgan watched his instruments with amazement. The dimensional barriers aren't weakening. They're becoming more stable. The entities are helping to heal the tiny tears that human consciousness creates. Captain Lucy Barnes, monitoring from the deep ocean, added her observations. The entities are organizing themselves into patterns that match human neural networks. It's like they're trying to think the way we think. Then, for the first time in galactic history, something unprecedented happened. The consciousness entities began to communicate directly with human minds, not to consume them, but to share knowledge and experience across dimensional boundaries. Dr. Lisa Wong was the first to make full contact. As a consciousness researcher, her mind was naturally attuned to the quantum effects that connected humans to other dimensions. The experience was overwhelming but not destructive. They're not predators, she announced, tears streaming down her face. They're refugees just like the Zephrians. They've been traveling between dimensions for eons, looking for a species that could communicate with them without technological barriers. The entities shared their story through direct consciousness transfer. They were indeed ancient beings that existed in the spaces between dimensions, but they were not the destroyers of the Zephrian civilization. They had arrived at the Zephrian world seeking communication, but the artificial quantum technology created barriers they could not bridge safely. The resulting incompatibility had created a feedback loop that drained Zephrian consciousness not to feed the entities, but because the artificial systems could not properly interface with dimensional consciousness. The entities had been trying to help, but their efforts had only made the technological barriers more unstable. Veltar listened to this revelation with growing wonder and horror. You mean my people died because we could not understand? Your people died because they tried to communicate across dimensions using machines instead of consciousness, Doctor. Wong explained gently. The entities have been searching ever since for a species that could bridge that gap naturally. Commander Phillips realized the full implications. And humans are the first species they've found that can do it. Correct, Lisa confirmed. Human consciousness naturally operates on quantum levels. We can communicate directly with dimensional entities without technological interference. We're natural translators between realities. But even as this communication breakthrough was happening, a new threat emerged. Long-range sensors detected massive ships approaching Earth from deep space. These were not more consciousness entities, but an aggressive alien species that had been following the entities across dimensions, seeking to capture and weaponize them. Captain Helen Roberts, commanding the newly activated hybrid vessel Unity that had been built using combined human innovation and Zephrian technology, reported the approaching danger. Admiral Park, we have hostile contacts incoming. 37. Ships, configuration unknown, but they're armed and moving fast. The hostile aliens, calling themselves the Devourers, had been hunting the consciousness entities for millennia. They wanted to capture the entities and use their dimensional abilities to conquer other realities. The entities had been fleeing from these predators when they encountered the Zephrians and later humanity. Admiral Lisa Park coordinated the defense from Houston Command. All units, we have a three-way situation. We need to protect both ourselves and our new dimensional allies from these Devourers. The battle that followed was unlike anything in human history. The consciousness entities shared their knowledge directly with human minds, allowing people like Lieutenant Sarah Kim to pilot spacecraft through dimensional folds. Engineer Maya Johnson found herself understanding alien technology intuitively. As the entities helped her consciousness bridge the gaps that had previously required complex calculations, Commander Ryan Davis led the final assault against the Devourer fleet. Using a combination of human creativity, Zephrian technology, and entity consciousness guidance, he piloted a weapon that turned the approaching asteroid the Devourers had been using as a base into a new moon for Earth. The Devourers, faced with the unprecedented alliance between humans, Zephrians, and consciousness entities, retreated to whatever dark corner of space they had emerged from. In the aftermath, Veltar stood with the human leaders in a chamber that now served multiple species and dimensions. Your people have accomplished something that no civilization in recorded history has achieved. You have formed an alliance that spans realities. Dr. Wong smiled, still glowing with the residual effects of dimensional consciousness sharing. We asked the right question. Instead of asking what we needed protection from, we asked what we could accomplish together. General Adams looked out at Earth, now orbited by both Zephrian crystal ships and shimmering dimensional entities that appeared as beautiful patterns of light. So what happens now? Now, said Captain Barnes, we explore. The entities have shown us pathways to realities we never imagined. The Zephrians have technology we're only beginning to understand. And humans have the natural ability to bridge all of it together. Admiral Park's final log entry summed up humanity's new position in the galaxy. The Zephrians came to protect Earth from a threat they didn't understand. Humans asked what that threat was and discovered it wasn't a threat at all, but an opportunity. Today, Earth becomes the first world where organic consciousness, advanced technology, and dimensional entities work together as equals. Humanity had not lost their freedom to alien protectors. Instead, they had gained the freedom to explore infinite realities, proving that sometimes the most dangerous question to ask is also the most important one. What if we tried something different?